Now that's
Jazz
athleticism.
Warriors, Donovan Mitchell throwing it down.
Look at that.
Every time I
Mitchell
see a highlight for Donovan Mitchell, I just think he could have been playing point guard at Madison Square Garden.
Why
but
would
no,
you want to do that?
No, they decided that they wanted Frank Ntilikina.
Yeah, Frankie smokes. There's nothing wrong with that. And
No, there is something wrong with that.
Oh, hey, watch this highlight, Canty.
Go for it. Go for
You know
it.
what Chris Boucher did right there? He contested. And you know what he gets for that? The glory of the block. Eat that, Montrezl Harrell.
That's
We're going up
ridiculous.
for the contest,
I
and
got
you're
it.
going to eat it.
It's a nice play. Stop overreacting.
I'm not
okay?
overreacting.
If Montrezl Harrell finishes the play, we're talking about him being on the highlight in the worst kind of way.
Yeah, but he had athletic integrity, and he said, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to contest. Good job for the Canadian Boucher.
All right, on to the NFC East now. 7 weeks left in the regular season. We know the division will come down to a two-team race. Eagles and Cowboys both sitting at 5-4. But with Dallas coming off a loss and the Eagles stringing 2 wins together, Jerry Jones knows, quote, Philadelphia is coming. Chris Canty, who will win the NFC East? You think the Cowboys or the Eagles?
I'm still leaning toward the Cowboys just because the Cowboys have had so much success in the Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott era against the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, you look at their last 10 matchups, it's been one-sided affair. And the Dallas Cowboys, this team, finds ways to be able to give the Philadelphia Eagles fits, and it starts with Ezekiel Elliott. I think everybody understands that he's the engine for that offense. But in that game on Sunday night, Jenna, Mike Zimmer and the Minnesota Vikings defense, they were intent on taking Zeke away from the Dallas Cowboys, and they did. And Dak Prescott couldn't go out there and beat him, although he played a magnificent game. It came down to Jason Garrett and his play calling, or lack thereof, in the final 2 minutes of the game for inexplicably handing the ball to Ezekiel Elliott twice, being down by 4 points. It just didn't make any sense. Those two runs had a negative 3 yards net. So I look at this situation when everybody knows that they're trying to take Zeke away. What can Dak Prescott and that Dallas Cowboys offense do? And so far, they haven't been able to answer that question in the affirmative, at least not to the level that you would expect a championship contender. So for me, after last Sunday's game, I still have the same questions about the Dallas Cowboys going into the second half that I had coming into the season, which is, can Jason Garrett be the difference in a positive way when you're playing against quality competition? Can this team overcome adversity and injuries when you're not whole? Can you go out there and play at a high level against good competition? And then can Dak Prescott consistently play at a championship level? Those are still the 3 questions that have yet to be answered in a positive way for the Dallas Cowboys. We're hoping to see it at some point. But, Jenna, up until this point in the season, they haven't shown us anything that would lead us to believe that those questions are going to be answered in a positive way.
But you're still leaning them slightly. Is that correct?
I'm still leaning that way slightly just by default because the Philadelphia Eagles have been so inconsistent this season as well.
Well, and to your point about Dallas dominating Philly in the Dak-Zeke era, Zeke's never lost to Philly. 5-0 in his career in the 5 games. He's obviously missed a couple of them that they've played since he's come into the league. Here's the reason why I'm still with Philadelphia. And I was with Philadelphia before the year. They were so disheartening early. You wanted to abandon them, but they were never able to lose contact with Dallas. I think Philly could lose to Dallas in Week 16 and still win this division. I don't think that any longer they have to get the split. I think that you look at Philly and you say, okay, in the final 7 games, they have 4 games that, even as inconsistent as they've been, you'd be shocked if they lost. Those games are, of course, against Miami, 2 games against the Giants, and Washington. So if they're sitting at 5 wins, if they just have to not fall all over themselves to get to 9, then even if they lose to Dallas, they can win this division. Now, whoever wins this division is going to be a 9 or 10 win team that is going to be at home in the first round against an 11 or 12 win team that doesn't win the NFC West. One of those teams we saw last night is going to end up being an overqualified wildcard team, probably be a road favorite in the first round of the playoffs against one of these 2 teams. But Philly is already through the gauntlet of their schedule. Dallas is just now beginning the gauntlet of their schedule, which is why them both being 5-4, even with Dallas right now having the head-to-head, to me that favors Philadelphia. And the other name you mentioned that I think is right now, a huge feather in Philly's cap is the head coach of the Cowboys, Jason Garrett. And Doug Peterson might not be the top 5 coach he appeared to be after they won the Super Bowl, but I trust Doug Peterson in game management. I trust Doug Peterson as far as understanding how to put his team in tight spots at the end. in a better position than I trust Jason Garrett. The Cowboys this year, 0-3 in one-score games. They had a close one against New Orleans, couldn't pull it off. They had a close one where they could have forced overtime against the Jets, and if they force overtime, they win that football game against the Jets, in my estimation. And they throw a pass to Jason Witten, and then 2 days ago, they have the game against Minnesota, which is there for the taking, and Dak said it after the game. I missed this yesterday, but I read the quote this morning. After the game, Dak said, yeah, I think, we don't want to leave too much time on the clock there for Minnesota, but you're worried. That is the ultimate definition of putting the cart before the horse. The time, you got to score.
Exactly.
You got to get it.
And then worry about leaving.
And in fact, while you're trailing, you need to score as quickly as possible. Because if you don't score, keep in mind, Dallas did get the ball back, but they only had 17 seconds. Had they not been as worried about grinding the clock, even if they fail on that second, third, and fourth down, maybe they have 45 seconds left. Maybe they have a minute left for Dak to try to pull off some heroics. So even though thus far this season, Dak has been better than Carson Wentz, and that was an advantage that I gave to Philadelphia going into the year, holistically as a total, I still believe in the Philadelphia Eagles more.
I think a lot of people would say at the beginning of the season that Carson Wentz would probably somehow edge out Dak Prescott at least a little bit, just from what we've seen the last couple of years, take the head-to-head out of it. If you look at both of these teams, they're both stacked at the skill positions. They both got tons of talent, and yet both teams have been so inconsistent this season. Does it come down to the quarterbacks and who you trust more down the stretch?
Well, here's the thing. I think Carson Wentz, from an ability standpoint, just has more than Dak Prescott. But the conversation is about the intangibles. Which quarterback is able to bring out the best in his guys most consistently? And I'd probably lean slightly toward Dak in that regard. Now, as far as Carson Wentz, the questions have been about his being able to stay healthy for his team and be available. But if these two guys are both healthy, then yeah, I think it'll be a closely contested race, and it'll come down to that Week 16 matchup. But the Dallas Cowboys, to me, the biggest question is the head coach. And Nick talked about some of the sequencing with play calling, but I mean, you had the first possession in that fourth quarter against the Vikings where you had the ball first and goal at the 6-yard line. You got to settle for a field goal, or even going back to the first possession that you had in the game where you get the ball in plus territory and you try to go for a Brett Maher 57-yard field goal that ends up being wide left by 18 feet. I mean, in that situation, you have to think if you got 2nd and 6, maybe this might be 4-down territory. But again, it goes back to the overall game management of Jason Garrett. And I think that's why we see some question marks regarding his future in Dallas and why Jerry Jones has not given him the contract extension. Jerry Jones is not sold on Jason Garrett continuing to be his head coach, because a good head coach finds ways for his team to be more competitive consistently, and a good head coach finds ways to put his team in position to win football games. And the Dallas Cowboys have not done that routinely throughout the course of this season.
To answer your question directly, Jenna, thus far this season, Dak's been head and shoulders better than Carson Wentz.
Yes.
Like when you look at the numbers, if the Cowboys were just 6-3, let's say they had just won the Jets game, then Dak's name would be included in that second-tier MVP conversation so far this year, because the numbers, he's top 5 in the league in nearly every relevant passing category. So I want to give him credit for that. The reason I can't trust Dallas, aside from the head coach, is because aside from the Philly win, their wins have come over 4 wins against 3 terrible teams. 2 against the Giants, 1 against Miami, and the one that I'm leaving out that was against Washington. So if they are going to get to the 9 wins they need, even if we give them the Philly win, okay, they also get Washington. Let's give them those 2 wins. Detroit has not been an awful team this year. We'll see if Stafford's back. They have New England. They have Buffalo. They have Chicago, who's a live team, assuming Trubisky doesn't kill him. And the Rams, who, while wildly underachieving, they have a winning record thus far this season. Like, the Cowboys are going to have to do in the second half something they were totally unable to do in the first half.
Right.
Beat some good football teams, and I don't know that I believe they can.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, back to last night's game. Did Russell Wilson edge out Lamar Jackson for MVP in the win?